Hi everyone, I'm Phil Merry.
And I'm Kathleen Falconer, and we're both National Influencing Officers at Alzheimer's Society.
Alzheimer's Society are the leading dementia charity in the UK. We focus on all aspects of dementia, including support services, funding research and campaigning for policies that will make dementia a priority. As a national influencing team, we work across England, Northern Ireland and Wales, campaigning on dementia diagnosis, social care reform and dementia research. So the background to this campaign is that Alzheimer's Society is campaigning for everybody to have access to a timely, accurate and high-quality dementia diagnosis. We use local dementia diagnosis data to see which trusts are doing dementia diagnosis well and where improvements are needed. And our long-term goal is that we want to see an end to the postcode lottery of dementia diagnosis. We believe that wherever you live in the country, you should have the same access to getting a dementia diagnosis and the support that can unlock. A dementia diagnosis is important because a diagnosis is key to a person's journey with dementia, as they can unlock support services, but also they can start making plans for their care and what they want to do with their lives. Of people living with dementia with a diagnosis, 91% of them said that receiving that diagnosis was beneficial. And with new treatments in development and currently going through the approvals process, an early diagnosis is required for access to disease-modifying drugs. Currently, Wales is the only UK nation that doesn't regularly publish any dementia diagnosis. The most recent Welsh dementia diagnosis data comes from before the pandemic, and then Wales had a diagnosis rate of below 50%, which is much lower than the target NHS England have set of 66.7%. The data was only available for Wales as a whole, with no local or regional breakdown, which makes understanding where improvements can and should be made really difficult. Data is key for our work because we use it to support local authorities and health trusts to improve. So without that data, we can't see where people are getting the care and support they need, but more importantly, where they aren't. The aim of this campaign was to secure the publication of dementia diagnosis data in Wales, and as health has devolved, we were targeting NHS Wales and the Welsh Government. Our mobilisers were Welsh MPs and MSs, and our 5,000 Welsh campaigners. So our original plan was that every year in May, Alzheimer's Society holds Dementia Action Week, which is one of our biggest moments of the year, where we raise awareness of dementia and encourage people to take action or make a donation. In 2023, this was centred around dementia diagnosis. During the week, we held an event in Westminster and had planned to hold a similar event in the Senedd. At the Westminster event, we were telling English MPs what their local dementia diagnosis rate was, and based on that, whether their constituency was traffic lighted as red, amber or green. At the event, we gave out these cards. So this is an example of what an English MP would have received. And this is what we were giving the Welsh MPs because their data simply wasn't available. As all campaigns do, we came up against challenges, most notably that our venue had been double booked for the event in Wales. So we had to reconsider our plans. So we used the Westminster event to talk to Welsh members of Parliament and needed a specific action for Welsh politicians to take. And as data was a topic that the Welsh Government were focusing on, we decided that an open letter signed by Welsh MPs and MSs asking for better dementia diagnosis data in Wales was the best route for us to take. During our Westminster event, we spoke to lots of Welsh MPs who were very unhappy that Wales had the worst data in the UK, and they were particularly unhappy that they had a particular worse picture than England. This included a conversation with the the current Secretary of State for Wales, David T.C. Davis, who was very supportive of our open letter, And although collective cabinet responsibility meant he couldn't sign it himself, he did send a copy of the open letter to the Welsh Health Secretary, Eluned Morgan. His interest and the interest of MPs from across the House told us the letter had the potential to be very successful, and we asked Welsh MPs to sign following our event. At the same time, we were contacting MSs, asking them to do the same. After our first ask to MPs and MSs, we then moved to engaging our 5,000 Welsh campaigners, designing an email to target through engaging networks, which was our first fully bilingual action, written in both Welsh and English. The email to target utilised the multi-target database function, so campaigners could email their MP and all of their MSs at the same time, which meant that campaigners were emailing 6 politicians at once. And in our letter copy, campaigners were asking MPs and MSs to sign the open letter. And as the campaign went on, we removed those MPs and MSs who had already signed the letter so that we weren't spamming people whose support we already had. So this is what our target data set looked like. The top list is the MSs and the lower list is the Westminster MPs. We chose to have the action in Welsh and English, partly because it's looked upon very favourably by the Welsh Government, as it's one of their priorities to expand the use of the Welsh language, but also it builds engagement with our campaigners whose first language is Welsh, but equally it builds particular relationships with Plaid Cymru in particular, but other parties in Wales. And this was exemplified by the fact that the current party leader of Plaid Cymru signed the letter alongside many of his MSs and MPs. We worked with a translator to translate everything into Welsh. So we had a copy of the letter in Welsh and English available on the page. Our emails all had at the top of them a view this email in Welsh, where we would make a version of the email in Welsh and then link the preview link so that they could just click on it and then see the email as they would have seen it. And target emails all had an English version at the top and a Welsh version below. This was our first Welsh-specific campaign, and we sent 4 emails to our 5,000 Welsh campaigners. We sent 3 email pushes of the action across the course of a month, and then we sent an email following the hand-in. This resulted in 356 campaigners sending 1,456 emails to their representatives, leading to 26 MPs and MSs from all Welsh political parties represented in the Senedd signing our letter, which can be seen here.
Hello, we're now in the offline portion of this presentation. So, as Phil's kind of covered, we built a lot of slightly unexpected momentum from our open letter action. So just to recap, by the end of our online action, we had 26 signatures from MPs and MSs in Wales. 26 might not sound like the most impressive number in the world, but that's over a quarter of the total number of Welsh MPs and MSs. So we were really happy with that. And as Phil's said, this included signatures from all 4 parties represented in the Senedd, so really across party support on that action. So the question kind of remained to us, this has gone better than expected, what now? So we decided to capitalise on this momentum by planning an offline moment. We chose a hand-in. I'm sure people in this room are very familiar with hand-ins. They're not always the most exciting thing in the world, and they can become overused slightly. But for us, it's important that we really focus in on what the purpose of a hand-in is in order to make sure that it's worthwhile. So for this, we hadn't really done any big offline moments in Wales. So it felt like a nice initiation to that, and to really draw attention to the issue of the lack of data in Wales and really make the point that there's an inequality happening here. the location. As Phil mentioned, we encountered some challenges, one of them being where we would hand in our open letter. NHS Wales doesn't have a particularly central office, and we just weren't sure that we'd be able to get the letter physically onto the right person's desk. So because of that, we decided on a hybrid approach to the hand-in, which meant that on the day, the open letter got emailed to Judith Paget, who was the CEO for NHS Wales, and that we would also have a sort of stunt photo opportunity to hand it in person as well. We decided to do Cardiff, and we picked the Millennium Centre for the photo recognition that it has, and also its proximity to the Senate, just making it a lot easier to invite supportive political members along as well. Things started to snowball a little bit, which is kind of the theme of this presentation, but I mean that in the best way. So originally we were just going to have staff hand in our letter. We'd only really been campaigning in Wales and actually in Northern Ireland as well for a few months prior, and Phil mentioned we have 5,000 campaigners in Wales at the time. We have like 80,000 campaigners in total, so the disparity between the numbers is kind of highlighted there. But we always want lived experience at the heart of our campaigns wherever possible, so we put the ask out there to campaigners to see if anyone wanted to come with us to the hand-in, and luckily people did. This is John and Sarah, their husband and wife. They're brilliant. They're really the heart of this campaign. We couldn't have done it in the way that we did it without them. We found them using engaging networks, so we classify our campaigners into different levels of engagement. One of them is hyper-engaged campaigners, meaning they take lots of campaign moments with us. And we also cross-referenced that they had actually taken the open letter hand-in action, and they had. And they have personal experience of dementia. Both of them have had a parent that they've lost to dementia, so they were really keen to get on board. And they happen to live near Swansea, so it's pretty convenient for them to get to where our hand-in was taking place. Props. I may be speaking to the wrong audience when I say this, but data can be quite dry, and it's not always the most evocative thing to campaign on. So we wanted to really capitalize on a visual element to tie into the hand-in to get our messaging across. We decided to play on the Error 404 page as just a really recognizable thing that people know, and it meant we could do something kind of cute with the oops, that data can't be found, and really cute in Welsh, by the way. And I think that really made the point that there was that disparity going on between nations. It also led us to a nice strapline: it's time to refresh the page on dementia data in Wales. And key with these props is that they actually proved really, really popular with media, which I'll come on to in a minute, but that would be my really key takeaway, is if you're thinking about having a campaign, think about what visual elements you can bring to the whole piece. The snowball continues. We end up with some warm politician support to actually come along on the day. This is Luke Fletcher, MS. He'd signed our open letter and had actually just recently taken some Dementia Friends training with our team. We then used this as an opportunity to ask him if he would like to come along, and he said yes. This also worked really well, as he's one of John and Sarah's MSs, so he offered to give them a tour of the Senate on the day, which I think is another key thing to consider if you want people with lived experience to come along on the day. Offer them something rather than just them being there as a photo op, and that was something really important to us. And it also added value for Luke, so he's actually subsequently become the chair of the CPG on dementia in Wales, which is really cool. We've kind of added value both ways. Keeps going. We now have media involvement. We start talking to internal teams about what we're planning on doing. And again, we just kind of thought at this point, maybe some internal comms will be interested in this. But actually our regional media team let us know that there's an opportunity for some national coverage in Wales. They were particularly interested in that visual of the props pages, which we were just quite surprised by. And so we ended up with ITV Wales actually getting in contact and arranging with us to cover our hand-in, which was really cool. They did a pre-filmed segment with John and Sarah in their home, which was nice. It added the personal touch to the campaign and really hammered home the messaging for us. But they also came on the day and interviewed us. This is James. He's our head of national influencing, so he was really able to get across the kind of policy messaging for the campaign as well. So it's nice to have both of those angles. So what happened on the day? We met at the Millennium Centre, we had a coffee, we chatted about the day, and we sent off our open letter to Judith Paget. And then we were joined by Luke Fletcher and his team alongside ITV Wales. We took some photos, we did some interviews. And that was kind of it. Like, it was quite a short moment, which again is why it was really key that John and Sarah had that Senate tour that they were able to do, so they weren't traveling. What is still like a fair way for just a really brief photo opportunity. And it meant that we then had time to prep content for our social media channels. So how did we keep the narrative going after the day? We actually co-wrote a blog in John and Sarah's voice for our website, just getting the message out to slightly colder audiences than our campaigners. We sent an email in their voice to encourage campaigners across all 3 nations to invite their politicians to various party conferences. So just really showcasing to people, when you contact your representatives, they actually do listen sometimes and they do things. And they've also been featured in our Dementia Voice magazine, which again is just going out to colder audiences about our campaigns and encouraging people to get a bit more involved in the work that we do as a campaigns team. So that's really cool. And I think this matters because we want to showcase to people that, again, we don't just use people as a photo opportunity. We don't get them involved in our campaigns in a really low bar way. We like to keep in touch with people, and when they're interested in getting involved with us, again, we like to give them opportunities. So actually in a few weeks' time, they're going to come to our annual conference and speak on a panel about their experience. So it's nice to keep that relationship going. What were the outcomes, the impact, the really important part of this presentation? First of all, we made headline news, which was fun, but we also had a response from Judah Paget with the offer of a meeting with Welsh Government officials. We had a commitment from the Welsh Government to secure the publication of data. I'm going to say we had a commitment, we'll come back to this later. We built relationships with key decision makers, and that includes the current CPG on Dementia chair, Luke Fletcher, and also most importantly, I think we've built a much stronger engagement with our Welsh campaigners, which again is a smaller group for us, is a younger group for us, but they've become really active campaigners with us in our recent campaigns, which has been amazing to see. Some key learnings. Again, apologies, data is lovely, but sometimes it can be dry, and it's important to not shy away from campaigning on dry topics, but just to make sure that you think of how you can make it more accessible to people. Props can really bolster that and be a key part of your campaign. So again, they can be a bit of a faff to organise, but they're really worth it if you can do it. Communicate internally about your plans. We were talking earlier about silos and cross-communicating between different teams. We just honestly wouldn't have got the coverage that we got if we hadn't mentioned it to different teams. So talk about what you do. And capitalize on a campaign moment, and really good storytellers to capture content that you can use for future moments. Don't just, waste that opportunity, because they can be really key relationships to build. Always be ready to pivot. We had to change plans so many times during this campaign, but in the best way. Like, when we started, we had no idea how big of a moment this was going to be. So just be flexible and really ready to embrace opportunities. And then some realism. A commitment in writing is not the end. So we had the commitment from Welsh Government. We're yet to actually see that data, which leads me to my next point. What's next? So we're continuing to influence the Welsh Government with an emphasis on the importance of securing that data and improving diagnosis. We were really active in campaigning around the Welsh leadership election, and we had really good, strong campaigner engagement, which we're capitalising on to do some future campaigning work as well. We're also pivoting to welcome new key stakeholders in Wales, because obviously we have some new faces in key positions, so we're trying to secure meetings with those people at the moment. And we are planning an event for Wales this year during Dementia Action Week. They are getting their own event this year to focus on diagnosis and to speak to key Welsh decision makers who come along and hear from both our team but also some other storytellers that we have been working with in the past few months. And that is everything from us. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, there's a few questions here. Did you send each of the emails individually or use a marketing automation to send emails, and any particular reason for whichever route you chose?
We sent each of the emails individually. We would take people out of it if they'd already taken action, and we were taking representatives out as they signed. So we didn't use, we haven't really got to grips as a team with the automations yet. I think it's something we would probably look to do at some point in the future, but we just sent them kind of natively.
Great. And then can you expand a bit on the classification categories for storytellers, and how did you do, what did you use in Engaging Networks to do that?
So we basically used our classification groups to sort campaigners into how active they've been. And that broadly works as kind of not really engaged at all, haven't taken an action for more than 2 years, have taken between 1 and 5 actions, which makes them kind of moderately engaged. Our engaged campaigners have probably taken between 5 and 8, and then 8 plus is our hyper engaged group. And basically we just use our constant reporting. So at the end of each action, making sure that we keep a log of who took those actions, logging it inside our Power BI dashboard, and then having that kind of automated. So actually we work with our data team so that then gets added to supporters' data file, and then we can just use it as another kind of user data field we've added to our account.
Just to add on to that, it's something we're kind of rejigging in terms of our offline engagement with campaigners, but in the past it's how we identify people we want to invite to come to things that are a little bit higher. But yeah, it's just a bit of an indication that I might be more interested in that.
Great. And then for future campaigns, would you segment the 500 plus people who sent letters any differently from other Welsh campaigners who didn't convert?
I think for future campaigning, we would look at potentially what messaging do we send to those kind of warmer campaigners who do take more of our actions compared to those campaigners who are still very cold, and that's something we're kind of looking at as a team. So yes, I probably would segment those that are, because now we've had this action, we've also had actions relating to the Welsh Labour leadership election and the open letter for the next Welsh government. So we've had a reasonable suite of actions so we can see who our kind of more engaged Welsh supporters are. So yes, I probably would look to be speaking to those more engaged supporters slightly differently compared to our campaigners who still haven't taken action with us in Wales.
Smart. And then have you continued to do Welsh translation?
Yes.
So we, if the campaigner email is specifically either targeting Wales specifically, so if we're doing kind of a whole UK send, we don't translate that into Welsh for our Welsh campaigners, but if it's a specifically Welsh email, we will have it translated, yes.
Yeah, and we do also make sure to use Welsh translation when it's copy that is being seen by politicians. So outside of just our campaigns work in our public affairs teams as well, because we have a team for each nation, so it's important to us.
Great. And then what mechanism did you use for MSs and MPs to sign your open letter?
They would, so the email was basically, in the email it would be, here's basically the open letter for you to sign. Could you just let our public affairs team know? So we just basically put the public affairs email address into the letter, and then someone from the MP or MS's team would just email our public affairs team and say, my MP would like their name added to the letter.
And then last question, could you expand on how you influenced leadership, and has the continuity in the health minister been a help or a hindrance?
So we had, we started when we were influencing the Welsh leadership election with an email to MSs, kind of more at the slight nominating stage. So getting people to write to their Labour MSs about what they'd want to see from a new Labour First Minister. And then as that campaign kind of went closer to the Labour Party members within Wales, we had campaigners signing an open letter which we will be kind of virtually handing in within Dementia Action Week this year. The continuity of the Health Minister, it's a bit early to say, but it is helpful in the sense that her department has made these pledges whilst she is still the minister. So it's useful that we have got that continuity to say, listen, this is still what was promised, and we still want to see it delivered. So I would say having some continuity is probably beneficial, yes.
Great. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.